Imagine you're exhausted beyond anything you've ever felt. Frostbitten, starving. Your body is done, but you're still moving. Because stopping means dying. And in that state, something strange happens to a surprising number of people. You start to feel like you're not alone.
Not imagined, not a hallucination you can shake off. A presence, walking beside you, helping you. This isn't rare. It's been reported by explorers, sailors, soldiers, and ordinary people who survived situations that should have killed them. And more than 100 years later, science still can't fully explain why.
In 1916, explorer Ernest Shackleton was trying to survive one of the worst disasters in the history of Antarctic exploration. His ship, the Endurance, had already been crushed by ice months earlier. Now he and two of his crew, Frank Worsley and Tom Crean, were attempting something that had never been done. Crossing 36 hours of frozen, unmapped mountains on South Georgia Island, with almost no food, no proper rest, and no margin for error. They were starving, frostbitten, moving on willpower alone.
And somewhere in those 36 hours, Shackleton began to feel like they weren't three men anymore. He would later write about the strange sense that a fourth figure was marching with them, unseen, but somehow there. Here's the part that made scientists sit up. He wasn't the only one who felt it. When the men finally reached safety, Worsley and Crean separately admitted the exact same thing. Three men on the same freezing mountainside, each silently convinced they weren't alone, and none of them had said a word about it until it was over.
Shackleton's story is the most famous version of this, but it's far from the only one. High on Mount Everest in 1933, climber Frank Smythe was alone, out of oxygen, and pushing through a snowstorm when he became convinced someone was walking just behind him. He said later that the presence felt so real, he found himself turning to offer it a piece of his mitten cake before catching himself and remembering there was no one there. Decades later, mountaineer Joe Simpson lived through something almost identical. After a horrific fall in the Peruvian Andes that shattered his leg, Simpson had to crawl and drag himself for miles back to base camp, alone, in agony, certain he was going to die on that mountain.
He later wrote about a voice, calm, steady, that seemed to guide his every move, which direction to crawl, when to rest, when to keep going, even when his body was screaming to stop. Shipwreck survivors have described it too. Sailors adrift for days, certain someone else was in the lifeboat with them, giving quiet instructions on when to bail water or which direction to paddle. Soldiers in combat, climbers trapped in storms, people pulled from collapsed buildings after disasters.
Different decades, different continents, different life or death situations, and the same experience described almost the same way, over and over again. Always calm, always guiding, always arriving exactly when the body has nothing left to give. It wasn't until 2009 that someone actually sat down and studied the pattern properly. Journalist John Geiger spent years collecting these accounts from adventurers, survivors, and disaster victims for his book, The Third Man Factor.
So what's actually happening in the brain? Scientists don't have one clean answer. What they have is a handful of competing theories, each explaining part of the puzzle, but not all of it. The first is oxygen deprivation. At extreme altitude or after days without proper food and rest, the brain is starved of the oxygen it needs to function normally. Neurologists have long known that low oxygen levels can distort perception, create false sensations, and in some cases, generate the feeling of a presence that isn't there. The second is sensory deprivation. When you're surrounded by nothing but white snow, empty ocean, or featureless terrain for hours, your brain isn't getting the normal stream of input it's used to. Some researchers believe it starts filling in the silence, manufacturing company out of nothing, the same way your eyes can conjure shapes in total darkness. But the theory that comes up most often among psychologists studying survival situations is something else entirely. That this is a coping mechanism. Under extreme, prolonged stress, the brain may split off a kind of internal voice, advisor, protector, companion, to help a person keep functioning when they are completely alone and running out of reasons to continue.
None of these theories fully explains why the experience feels so specific, why it's almost always described as calm, not frightening, why it gives instructions, why it feels less like a hallucination and more like company. The truth is, no single theory has been proven. Scientists studying survival psychology are honest about that.
This remains one of the few human experiences that is both extremely well documented and still not fully understood.
Here's the detail that researchers keep coming back to. Almost none of these accounts describe the presence as threatening. It doesn't chase, it doesn't frighten. In case after case across 100 years of testimony, it does one thing. It helps. It suggests which direction to walk. It offers silent comfort when a person is convinced they're about to die. Shackleton, Smythe, the shipwrecked sailors, the survivors of modern disasters, all of them describe some version of the same thing. Not a threat in the dark, a companion in it.
Think about what that actually means. At the exact moment your body is failing and your mind has every reason to spiral into panic, something inside you appears to do the opposite. It doesn't add to the fear, it answers it. If this really is your brain protecting itself, manufacturing comfort out of nothing right when you need it most, then the most dangerous moments of a person's life may also be revealing something most of us never get to see. A built-in mechanism, quietly waiting, whose entire purpose is to keep you from giving up. You'll probably never find yourself stranded on a frozen mountain or adrift at sea with no one else in the boat. But the architecture behind this experience doesn't only switch on in Antarctica or the Andes. The same brain that manufactured company for Ernest Shackleton in 1916 and guided Joe Simpson down a mountain decades later is sitting inside you right now. Untested maybe, quiet for now, but there, wired in, waiting. The same way it was wired into every person who ever needed it and didn't know it yet.
So here's the question nobody has fully answered. If your mind is capable of creating comfort out of nothing, exactly when you need it most, what does that say about what you actually are? Not what protects you when things are calm and predictable. What shows up when everything else has already failed? When there's no one left to help you but yourself? Maybe it's biology, a survival trick refined over thousands of years. Maybe it's something we simply don't have the language for yet. Either way, it's already inside you. Quiet, patient, waiting for a moment you hope never comes.